Hello everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Today, we're going to explore the powerful and emotional story of Jack and Tu Tien, two people who fought to survive when a devastating storm struck their new home. From the chaos of rising floodwaters to the strength they found in each other while helping their neighbors, this story is filled with heartbreak, resilience, and hope. If you enjoy this kind of storytelling, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss the next video. The storm did not arrive gently. It came without warning, a monster uninvited, tearing into the valley with a roar that shook the earth and bent the sky into a furious gray. Just a few days earlier, Jack and Tu Tien had carried boxes into their new home, laughter echoing against the bare walls, their dreams as carefully held as a newborn child. They believed they had stepped into a chapter of peace after years of hardship, finally free to rest. Their house stood proud with whitewashed walls and a red-tiled roof, symbols of safety, beginnings, and hope. They had painted the rooms together, brushes dipping in bright colors. They laughed over crooked curtains and gently argued about where to place the chairs. At night, lying in their new bed, they whispered about the children they hoped would someday fill these halls with footsteps and laughter. This house was not just a structure, it was their future. Yet futures are fragile. Nature can unravel them in a heartbeat. That morning, Tu Tien woke to the low growl of thunder. It rolled through the hills like a distant drumbeat. She lay in bed, listening, unease crawling into her chest. Jack was already awake, his brow knit with worry as he checked the windows. The weather forecast had spoken of heavy rain, but nothing more. No one said it would be this bad. Then the heavens split open. Sheets of rain poured down as though the sky itself had cracked. The sound on the roof was deafening, a steady drumbeat of doom. Tu Tien stood in the doorway, her breath caught in her throat. Within minutes, the garden transformed into a swirling pool. Fear clutched at her chest. She tried to calm herself. This was just another storm. They had survived storms before. They would survive this one too. But this was not just a storm. This was Bualoi, a typhoon that clawed at the earth like a ravenous beast. The wind tore at trees, bending their trunks until they snapped like brittle matchsticks. Tiles shook loose from the roof and rattled against the ground. Outside, blurred into chaos, rain and wind merging into one violent curtain. Jack shouted above the roar, telling Tu Tien to step away from the window, but she could not look away. The house trembled, as if alive with fear. She thought of the nights they had spent dreaming here, of how Jack had poured his body and spirit into building these walls. And now she watched helplessly as nature tried to rip it all away. The water rose faster than either of them expected. Within an hour, the front steps were gone, submerged beneath the flood. The current dragged branches, furniture, and shattered fragments of neighbors' lives. Jack's voice grew sharp, pulling her back inside. She obeyed, though her heart remained outside with the drowning world. Inside, the air grew heavy with dread. Candles flickered as the electricity failed. Each gust of wind rattled the windows so violently that Tu Tien feared they would burst. Jack worked quickly, lifting valuables onto higher shelves, doing what little he could to resist the storm. But she saw it in his eyes, the truth he tried to hide. No matter how strong a man builds, no wall is eternal against sky and sea. Tu Tien sat clutching a small wooden box, her knuckles white. Inside were her treasures, photos of her parents, the embroidered scarf her mother had given her on her wedding day, and the first letter Jack had ever written. Her hands shook, not only from fear of losing the house, but from the deeper terror of losing home itself. What is a house, she wondered, if not the vessel of our memories and promises? And what becomes of love when the vessel is shattered? The water climbed higher, licking at their doorstep. Jack moved like a man possessed, pacing, checking, bracing what he could. Tu Tien caught his eye, her own brimming with tears. He forced a smile. "It will pass," he said, though his voice cracked. She nodded, pretending to believe him, because sometimes love is pretending. She whispered silent prayers into the dark. She prayed for the walls to hold, for the water to stop rising, for the storm to move on. But the storm only grew angrier, its howls mixing with the cries of unseen neighbors. By midnight, water seeped inside. Cold and relentless, it crept over the floor, swirling around their ankles. Jack tried to brace the doors, but the pressure outside was merciless. With a crack like a gunshot, the door gave way. Water surged in, a beast unchained, sweeping away rugs, chairs, and the air itself. Tu Tien screamed as the table overturned, belongings twisting in the current. Jack grabbed her hand, pulling her toward the staircase. "Come on!" he shouted above the roar. Step by step they climbed, water chasing their heels, until they reached the upper floor, leaving ruin behind. From the window, Tu Tien stared out into a black ocean. The neighborhood was gone, erased beneath furious waves. Distant cries for help rose and vanished in the wind. She pressed her palms against the glass, her breath fogging the pain. Helplessness clawed at her bones. Jack wrapped an arm around her shoulders, his face pale, his silence heavier than words. She leaned into him, pressing her ear against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, the only thing that had not broken. Happiness had been so brief, she thought. Just days ago, this house had been alive with laughter, the smell of herbs cooking, the promise of a future. Now it was filled with water, shadows, and the taste of fear. She closed her eyes and felt, for the first time in years, powerless. The night dragged on like a trial without end. Every crash of thunder reminded them how small human lives are against the weight of nature. From upstairs, they huddled together and watched their living room drown. The sofa where they once curled up floated like a useless raft. Books dissolved into mush, their stories melting into pulp. Even their wedding photo drifted face down, its image blurred beyond recognition. Tu Tien's throat tightened at the sight. A house was not supposed to drown. Dreams were not supposed to dissolve like paper. Jack tried to keep her calm, talking about rebuilding, about insurance, about survival. His words were steady, but hollow. She knew the pride he had carried in this home was breaking inside him. She reached for his hand, holding it tightly, not to comfort herself, but to remind him that he was not alone. Near dawn, the storm reached its peak. The roof groaned, beams shuddering like bones about to break. Jack pulled her close, whispering not to panic if the roof gave way. Tu Tien bit her lip until she tasted blood, forcing herself to be brave, even as terror clawed her heart. She prayed again, tears running silently down her cheeks. The wind screamed like an angry god outside. But slowly, finally, the fury waned. The rain softened, the wind retreated. Exhausted, they sank to the bedroom floor, clinging to each other as though letting go meant being swept away. Jack's voice was hoarse when he whispered, "We made it." Tu Tien wanted to believe him, yet when she looked out the window, her heart cracked. The valley was unrecognizable. Trees lay uprooted like corpses. Cars floated like toys. Houses were shattered shells. Their own home still stood, but barely. The ground floor was ruined, and she knew it would never be the same. The days that followed blurred together, each one heavy with mud, exhaustion, and grief. As the floodwaters slowly receded, they left behind layers of filth clinging to every surface. The smell of rot filled the air. Jack worked tirelessly from dawn until dusk, salvaging what little remained. Tu Tien joined him, her hands raw from scrubbing and lifting, though the heavier weight was inside her, seeing their dreams turned into wreckage. Their neighbors moved through the ruins of their own homes, faces hollow, voices subdued. Some cried openly in the streets, while others worked in silence, numb to it all. The valley, once alive with children's laughter and the rhythm of daily life, had fallen into a hush, broken only by the scrape of shovels, the splash of boots, and the occasional sob. Tu Tien forced herself to keep moving, to clean, to help, but her thoughts wandered. Only days ago she had stood in their bright kitchen cooking herbs in a pan, Jack teasing her for using too much salt. They had raised glasses of cheap wine and toasted to their future. Now that same kitchen smelled of mildew and ashes. At night, they collapsed onto a salvaged mattress upstairs. Jack fell quickly into sleep, worn out from endless labor, but Tu Tien lay awake, staring at the broken ceiling beams. Her mother's words returned to her. "You can lose your house, your clothes, even your name, but if love survives, you have not lost all." Tu Tien repeated the saying like a mantra, clinging to it. Yet the weight pressing on her chest asked harder questions. Could love rebuild walls? Could love fill empty cupboards? Or make a ruined house feel like home again? Jack carried his own private storm. When Tu Tien drifted into restless dreams, he lay awake, haunted by shame. He thought of every coin he had saved, every hour worked to build this home, brick by brick. He remembered lifting beams with blistered hands, sweating late into the night, believing it was worth it because he was building a future. And now, in a single night, it was gone. He knew he wasn't to blame, but shame whispered otherwise. He had promised her safety, promised her rest, and he could not deliver either. One morning, while shoveling mud from the entrance, Jack looked up and saw Tu Tien sitting by a shattered window. She stared at the horizon, her face pale, her eyes far away. He set the shovel aside and walked to her. "Are you all right?" he asked softly. She didn't answer at first. Then, in a voice barely louder than the wind, she said, "I don't know if I can bear it, Jack. Every corner of this house reminds me of what we lost. It hurts just to breathe here." Her words cut him deeper than the storm had. For the first time, he feared not only losing the house, but losing hope in her heart. Kneeling beside her, he took her hands in his. "I know it hurts, but we're still here, you and I. That means we can begin again." Tears welled in her eyes. "But how many times, Jack? How many times must we begin again before life lets us rest?" He had no answer. He only pulled her close, holding her as if he could anchor her to the earth by sheer will. The days took on a rhythm, clearing mud, salvaging scraps, repairing what could be saved. Neighbors helped one another, trading tools, sharing food, offering words of encouragement. Jack offered his strength to lift beams and dig trenches, his determination steady. Tu Tien helped as much as she could, though at times the sight of destruction overwhelmed her. She would sink to the ground, sobbing quietly. Jack never scolded her. He simply sat beside her until the tears passed, then helped her stand again. Amid despair, small sparks of tenderness survived. One evening, Tu Tien managed to brew a bitter cup of tea over a small fire. She handed it to Jack. He sipped, smiling as though it were the finest drink in the world. "Thank you," he whispered. For a brief moment, warmth bloomed in her chest, but nightmares clung to them. Many nights, Tu Tien jolted awake, breathless, clutching Jack as visions of the flood consumed her. Jack soothed her, stroking her hair until she calmed, though he too carried the same fear. They lived each day with determination, and each night with dread. Then, one afternoon in the garden, Tu Tien stopped. She knelt down, eyes wide. A small white flower had pushed through the mud, its petals delicate, impossibly pure against the ruin. She touched it gently, her voice trembling. "Look, Jack." He crouched beside her, studying the bloom. For the first time in weeks, his lips curved into a genuine smile. "Yes," he said quietly, "life finds a way." That single flower became her fragile thread of hope. Each time despair threatened to drown her, she remembered its defiance. Rebuilding was slow. Supplies were scarce, money scarcer still. Jack bartered his labor in nearby towns for nails, wood, and stone. Each time he left, Tu Tien's chest tightened with fear. Fear of storms returning, fear of silence in the empty rooms. She waited by the broken window until his weary figure returned with supplies. Each return felt like a small miracle. She realized love was sometimes nothing more than this, the act of coming back, again and again, no matter the wait. As weeks turned into months, scars of the storm remained everywhere. Houses patched with mismatched boards, streets still lined with dried mud. Yet resilience appeared too. Families cooked together over fires. Children chased each other in puddles. Laughter returned in cautious bursts. Still, grief clung to Tu Tien. She sometimes closed her eyes and saw their home as it once had been. Fresh paint, warm kitchens, Jack's laughter echoing through the halls. The memory was both a comfort and a wound. One evening, she asked, "Do you regret building here, in this valley?" Jack gazed at the fields, his voice calm. "No. This was our dream. The storm broke the walls, but it didn't take the dream. And I'd rather fight for it here with you than live anywhere else without you." His words pierced her grief like sunlight through clouds. For the first time, she let herself believe they could endure. The following months felt like walking a narrow bridge between despair and determination. Jack rose before dawn, hammering nails, patching walls, hauling stone. Tu Tien swept mud, tended their fire, washed what little they could save. Slowly, they stitched fragments into something resembling a home. It wasn't the flawless red-roofed haven they had once imagined, but it sheltered them. Scars remained, not only on walls, but in Tu Tien's heart. Sometimes she stared at the river, imagining it rising again. Jack noticed, always reaching for her hand. Hope came slowly, like dawn creeping across the valley. One star-filled evening, Tu Tien whispered, "What if it happens again? What if everything we build is only meant to be destroyed?" Jack looked at the sky before answering. "Then we build again. Not because we are blind to loss, but because love deserves walls, even if those walls fall 100 times." Tears slipped down her cheeks. In that moment, she understood. The true foundation of their home was not brick or tile, but love, and no storm could wash that away. By year's end, the valley stirred with a new life. Crops grew, children ran, and patched roofs kept families dry. Jack and Tu Tien lit candles each night, filling their house with warmth. Tu Tien sang softly while she worked, her melodies weaving comfort through broken walls. Jack paused to listen, gratitude swelling in his chest. They were scarred, yes, but alive. Slowly, joy returned. Sometimes Tu Tien whispered, "I miss what we had." Jack would hold her close and answer, "So do I, but we'll make new memories. One day this place will hold more joy than sorrow." Together, they painted walls with bright colors, planted flowers in the yard. When the first blossoms opened, Tu Tien smiled, not a fragile smile, but one filled with quiet strength. One day, they stood outside their patched home. Its scars were visible, its edges imperfect, but it stood. Jack wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "This isn't the house I promised you," he said softly. "It's more, because it proves that when the world tried to tear us apart, we stayed." Her eyes shimmered as she leaned against him. For the first time since the storm, she felt peace. The flood had stolen walls, furniture, dreams, but it had not taken Jack's determination, nor her capacity to hope. That night, under lantern light, they sat on their worn steps, the valley quiet, the river calm. Tu Tien rested her head on his shoulder and whispered, "We may never live without storms, but as long as you are here, I am not afraid." Jack kissed her hair. "Then let the storms come. They cannot break us." And in that truth, they found something stronger than walls, love that refused to surrender. Jack and Tu Tien had just moved into their dream home, a place they believed would finally bring peace after years of struggle. But when Typhoon Bualoi struck without mercy, their happiness was torn apart overnight. Floodwaters consumed their house, memories, and neighborhood, forcing them to the upper floor as everything they loved drowned below. In the aftermath, despair weighed heavily. Mud, ruin, and silence replaced laughter and comfort. Yet, through grief, they discovered resilience. Together, they rebuilt piece by piece, supporting neighbors, sharing food, and finding hope in even the smallest signs of life, like a flower pushing through the mud. Though scars remained, Jack and Tu Tien realized their true foundation wasn't walls or a roof. It was love, unshakable even in ruin. No storm could take that from them.